Hello, and welcome to another prize-winning podcast episode. No, they just can't help themselves. Let's head over to Studio 2B.
Hello, and welcome to another Conversations in Time podcast. I'm John N.
And I'm Ian G.
So let's get back into it with Joe. We start a minute or so before the end of the last episode. Enjoy.
The Sydney cricket ground they were going to allow Packer. Packer was able to get he dumped a lot of money on their lap to play just a couple matches at the ground, and the Sydney cricket ground trust gave in. They needed the money. They wanted the money, and they were now going to allow him to use a
Proper cricket ground.
a real cricket ground.
And he paid the lights to be installed as well, didn't he? That was...
And he offered to pay to have the lights put in, and the Sydney Cricket said no, they would do it themselves. So, and that's exactly what happened. Now lights were going to be right at the Sydney Cricket Ground, which is it's a giant deal, right? Again, you're changing fundamentally the way cricket is being played across and realizing the market potential, playing games at night so that people can come off of work and they might miss the first hour or so of play, but they can be there for the rest of the match. And so this would hopefully be a draw. And if I may, Kim, just for a second, behind the scene in all of this, and none of this came to light. And John, I'm not sure what books you've been reading on the Packer thing. But there was a meeting that took between Don Bradman and Kerry that was held in early 1979 as the second season was getting started. And that meeting remained a secret until both men were dead. And so it seems like that was the beginnings of the end was that meeting. So, if I may, as it turns out, Don Bradman kept up a correspondence with the guys that founded the C.C. Morris Cricket Library in Philadelphia. And first started working there and that kind of stuff. I found this folder in the file at Don Bradman, and I opened it up, and here was all this correspondence from Bradman, in the 70s up to the 80s, between Bradman and the guys that found it. So what struck me was that one of the letters in 1977, as this was all getting started, that he wrote a letter to the guy that he was corresponding directly with the president of the season in those days, a guy named Howard Comfrey, has since passed away, and that kind of and these letters over time become very chummy in a sense. And Bradman talks about his wife's health and his own health. And then he turns around and says, I need to be fit in the trials ahead and to participate in the trial of strength with Packer, who seems determined to wreck everything we hold dear in the cricket world. So I'm quoting this for a reason. I understand his action versus the ICC will commence in the London courts tomorrow. Our board treasurer has flown out to be our witness. No matter what happens, I don't think the game will ever be the same. Again, the values you and I cherish so much will have been damaged, all repair. So as it turns out, in Australia, Don Bradman kept us as to what he thought about the whole Kerry Packer world. And I remember I had read that somewhere, in one of the books, and when I came across that letter, I realized, oh, wait a minute. This is this is a statement by Bradman about the Packer thing. You get the full portent. Obviously, he felt safe enough to run an American about this, probably realizing that it's not going to go anywhere other than, the two of us back and forth. He never would have written and put it in writing that way to any Australian, anything like that, because he did try to keep his mouth shut, realizing that whatever he said or did would probably sway what was going to happen with World Series credits. It turns out when Don Bradman was playing, when he was a player there in the early 30s, Kerry Packer's grandfather, Robert Packer, had hired Don Bradman to be a reporter and to write about test match on the day that they occurred, right after the match was over. Bradman would pen a story that would appear in the newspapers. So when the Bodyline series was to start, the Australian Cricket Board had a rule that if you played for Australia, you could not, be a reporter and make for newspaper. And so at the time, the Australian board could turn around it and say, Bradman, you're going to have to quit your newspaper writing for the Packer people, or you won't be able to play. And Bradman turned around and said, I'm not going to play at that. I won't play for Australia. I have to honor my contract. And the reason why Brad was like that, right, in 1931, 30, 32, 33 was because that's how he was making his money. He was not making his money playing for Australia. He was making his money off of the outside things, including this contract to write in Adelaide. And so, indeed, this was an impasse. And eventually, Packer's grandfather, he backed down and he released Bradman from the contract and said, no, okay, we'll resume the writing bit, but for now, go ahead and play for Australia. So in a certain sense, Bradman had a history with the Packer family. So Kerry Packer flew out to Adelaide and met with Bradman, and there it became obvious that Bradman wanted to end, and that indeed, if you want to think of it that way, the Kerry Packer had won. And so there was a meeting of the Australian Cricket Board within a few days, and Bradman, told Packer, have one of the representatives there, and this thing will. And so when the meeting took place a couple days later, there was a Packer, not Packer himself, one of his guys was there with the board, including Bradman, and they made the same offer. Here it is, 1.5, 3 years, 1.5 million for 3 years. And they added in, and we, the World Series cricket, we have the ability, we will market Australian cricket for the next 12 years. And the board accepted it. And then they said the color clothing stays. And the Australian board said yes to that too. They were fine with that. Nothing was to be done. The players that had signed up should be reinstated to their boards, and not disciplinary should happen afterwards. And I think there was there might have been one quip in the meeting, and then Don Bradman did say out loud, I don't care what it takes, get this deal done right now. Whatever they want, get. So we have, you have this feeling that, and all of that kind of downplayed at the time. Certainly Bradman behind the scenes role of sitting with Packer and saying, yes, how can we repair damage? And then Packer turned around once he was given the television rights, turned around and said, that's it, World Series Crescent's over, except for the marketing part, but they would still market Australia. But that players would now, the people that, ran cricket would now run cricket again.
But so there was only 2 seasons of Series cricket. Yeah. I mean, that one of the things that he did, to be fair to Packer, the players had signed a 3-year deal and then they'd only played 2 seasons, but he honoured the 3 years. He gave he certainly paid him up. He was very honourable when it came to a contract. It was like that.
Yeah, and right. And Packer seemed to have been smart enough during the whole controversy that, he did keep saying that he was doing it because players and that, that was one of his conditions at one point was, give me the television rights and guarantee that we'll be allowed to return, all right, to establish cricket, that kind of stuff, without any discipline. So it seems as if he did the twin tracks, worried about the players, financial futures, and at the same time guaranteeing wanting the tele rights. And so as it turns out, right, that some of the players do return to, their boards. Other players felt as if they were now not picked because they had been World Series cricket guys, and some careers now did come to an end. Ian's right. A lot of the guys were to their careers.
Well, certainly the English players. Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the list of the English players I recognise many of the names.
Yeah.
And
Underwood. Yeah.
Yeah, indeed.
William Allen not, but he played. Yeah, he carried on playing for England after WSC. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Excuse me, it's my fault. Sorry, carry on. I need to answer his apologies.
Real world issues. I mean, that was one of the things I was going to say, Joe. In terms of WSC, there was an Australian team. I mean, in terms of the setup, there was an Australian team, there was a West Indies team, and then there was a world team. Is that right? Or did he?
Yeah, right. Those were the big 3. And then
there was something called the Cavaliers. Was that what they called the world team? Or was that just, I obviously missed it in the book where they were talking about them.
It's like a 4th team, but it really was world 11 as they signed up, even more players from India and Pakistan as they began. So that Cavaliers was like traveling, so to speak, because they took in the second season, World Series cricket went on the road a little bit, and they played matches like in the West Indies.
Yeah.
Right. I think that they played a match or two, maybe in England. I could be wrong about that.
Didn't they do something in the US? I'm sure I read something that they went to the US.
I mean, you are correct about that. But that was not an official World Series cricket match in the United States. That was born from a West Indian businessman had come up with this idea of trying to stage a match in New York against an American versus a world all-star team. Tony Gregg came with a bunch of players, including Garfield Sobers, who came out of retirement to play in that match in a baseball stadium up in New York. And it was not well attended. It did not get a lot of from the United States. I guess the West Indian businessman that had set it up disappeared with the money. And so the players never got paid, but they had promised to be paid for going to US. So that turned out to be a failure. But you're right. You keep reading that was one of the things that Packer had in his mind was to try and take World Series cricket to the United States and break that American hit, right?
Yeah.
And one of the books I had read by Henry Blofeld.
Oh, yeah. Sure. Blowers, as they call him, yeah.
Yeah, right, Blow. So, and he was very anti-Packer. Those guys tried to be even-handed, but the anti-Packers in their books. And yeah, he mentions in there that, that was Packer's real intent to crack that American and that, Blofeld writes, of course they'd have to make changes for the Americans, lower the amount of overs to 25 over a match, and therefore, make it a 3-hour, analogous to a baseball game and that kind of thing. But that never occurred. However, right, that is the mantra that the ICC has kind of used ever since, that they're ever going to break into the American, what's going to have to be with a team. Go back to the late 70s, and that seemed to have been already talked about, making changes to speed up the game, for an American to really occur.
Yeah. They did have the the fielding restriction circle as well, didn't they? That they put in.
Right, correct. That, and again, everything for to increase scoring. Sixes and fours is and sixes and fours are what it's all about. I mean,
oh yeah. Well, that's what the crowds want. It's no good seeing, a maiden over where he's bowled it and nothing happens. He runs up again and he taps it into the ground. It's
right. And so I guess that brings up an interesting point too, right? So when did that occur? When not realizing the importance, the athleticism of the maiden over. And when does it become smash that ball the hell out of this? And that's what I want to do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Is that?
No, I think that's a recent, that's the last 10 years phenomenon.
I think so.
About the classic. I mean, I got into Test cricket because, frankly, back in the 80s, there was, when I was unemployed and at college and all the rest of it, I had lots of time in my hand. There was nothing else on the TV, but because a Test match could be, as you know, 4 or 5 days, 10 hours a day, and they would show it on the BBC, and there would be nothing else on 3 channels. But it's an art in its own right. It's that concept of I'm walking into the wicket and I'm going to be here all day if I can. And if that means I score 25 runs, it means I score 25 runs. Hopefully tomorrow I'll score 50. That art of slow cricket, for a better expression. If any Test match team is still playing at that, I don't think so. England patently aren't. Baseball and all that good stuff. But I think it's a relatively recent thing whereby the concept of defending your wicket, assisting your partner at the other end, getting settled in. I mean, even some of the terminology, the concept of a night watchman, whereby you put in somebody who's just going to stand there for an hour and hopefully not get out, but will get out very early the following morning. Can you imagine that concept? I get that they still do it, but I'm not even sure they do, frankly. But that concept of just keeping the match going, so I can show you my skills. If we win, great. If we lose, not so good. I think that a lot of that's gone now. But as John's mentioned, and the volume of the number of people watching it in comparisons was 25, 30 years ago.
Well, I think there's another thing as well in that it's not Test cricket, because Test cricket's not about trying to whack the ball every time.
Well, it never used to be, but debatably.
All right, so the last English test, yes, they tried to do a T20 in a test match.
Well, they've been doing that for a number of years, haven't they? But
well, they were really going for it this last time.
Yeah.
I think that the last Ashes series that it's not the same way.
Well,
Right, yeah. Yeah.
But indeed, but has that lesson been? Has that lesson been learnt because they managed to scrape, a couple of wins at the end? I think, well, but anyway, but that doesn't.
But some of it sometimes goes with the bowling. So I mean, like in the World Series cricket, they did a lot. It was all about fast bowlers, wasn't it? They didn't have many spinners, and when somebody's bowling fast and you hit it, you either caught, you miss it, you caught, or it goes for a 4 or a 6. It's not, you're not playing it for a 1 or a 2 because the ball's coming at you too fast. And then cricket seems to have evolved more. India and Pakistan got more into the game. They have a lot more spinners. The game slows down a bit. Even one day cricket is a bit slower. It's just personal opinion. It went through a bit of a phase. So World Series cricket had high scoring, potentially high score fast bowlers, and now with T20. It's high. Well, I mean, that's designed to be high scoring. There's no doubt about it. You only get 20 overs to get it. Yeah, that's right. It is a different. The way they stand is different. They're standing sideways to the ball and not
like baseball players.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, right. I know. Yeah, the skill. I was just talking to the high school that I teach at. Right, our gym teachers from Jamaica, and we're talking a little bit about the Cricket World Cup going on right now, and he said, "Oh, did you see the highlights for the South Africa Afghanistan?" Oh, you know what? I didn't get a chance to catch that match. And he said, well, watch the highlights because it's like watching a baseball. And I did watch it. And to be honest with you, most highlights from T20 match look like baseball game. You know what I mean? Make no mistake about it too, right? That they count the fours. They always give you the number of tournament sixes, the number of tournament four, and all of these competitions. This is a big deal, right?
Yeah.
So the way that, audiences view cricket, the way that players play cricket, all of that has tremendously changed, right? Test cricket, except in England, Australia, but like test cricket in other countries, the ratings are low, the attendance poor, and that's a situation.
Is that a reflection of the wealth of those countries as much as else? I mean, England and Australia. I mean, look at us. We've got a large number of early retirees. You've got people who can easily take a day off from work or 2 or 3 days off from work, to attend a sporting event. You've got paid leave. You've got affluence. The grounds are easy to get to, etc., etc. The West Indies obviously is a strange conglomeration of islands anyway. So and then there's been issues obviously in Pakistan with security and all the rest of it. So and India to an extent, but I wonder if that's just a sort of a demographic issue. One question, my biggest question for you, Joe, would be your opinion. Do you think the Packer leagues or the World Series leagues, were they a false dawn? Did they really make a big difference? Because was the cricket in the 80s and even into the 90s, was it really that different from the 70s and the 60s? Apart from the money that the players are getting, arguably, but even...
I don't know whether the money, once the Packers off the scene and they're back, these guys are back playing their boards again.
Yeah.
They're not being offered 30 in the 80s. They're not being offered $30,000 for matches. Like the money goes back down again a little bit. It'll never go as low as it was prior to Packer, but there's not like huge jump that occurred. Once the Packer think kind of a grinding halt and they make the agreement, money's better in the 80s for a lot, but it's still not what it will become later, right? And a lot of that is television money, right? There's no way to get around that. This becomes like the driving force is TV revenue, right? For not just cricket, for all sports.
Yeah.
Look at the Premier League and the same kind of thing. Like it wasn't so much about the tickets and people go for the matches on a Saturday afternoon. It was about the TV marketing of it, right? That's what it becomes. And that's what opens up, that's what increases players' salaries and that kind of at the same time in England, I know, football's a kettle of fish here, when you talk about England and, troubles that occurred in the 80s and that stuff. And then they, create the English Premier League, raised prices of individual tickets for a match. Something fierce, right? The stadium's all cedar. That kind of, I mean, like for football, they took the necessary steps to get themselves ready for, in essence, become the next level, which huge amounts of international art teams, right?
But again, a lot of that was down to satellite, or what you would call in America cable TV, wasn't it? So as soon as there was an explosion of non-government funded or certainly non-government sanctioned terrestrial television, as we would call it in the UK, so Sky Television obviously took over a lot of the cricket. In fact, you couldn't see, until about 2 or 3 years ago, you couldn't see cricket played on British television unless you had a subscription.
Pay-per-view, yeah.
Now there's a bit of T20, or is it the 100? I was at the two mixed up.
The 100. Yeah, the 100.
Yeah, you could see recorded highlights, and in a lot of ways that was fine. But you're not, you'd be an hour every night of the Test match ban. But then that's also true of football. But let's not get into that. But to a certain extent, certainly live games.
But if you want to talk about the legacy, I mean, you're right. I mean, T20 doesn't come out of Packer, but I mean, I would say that, a better televised event came out of Packer. Because TV prior to Packer was pretty staid, boring.
But are we talking generally or just in Australia? Because I don't think
generally
changed.
Yeah, I think they started putting more cameras in. In the book I was reading, I can't remember. There was the one guy was saying, "I'm sick of seeing the batsman's backside." The camera when the bowler bowled was always shown from behind the batsman. And then they might cut to another camera after he'd hit the ball, but it was always
right.
There was very few choices. And so I mean, I think that makes the viewing experience better. Because you get a bit more, immersed in the game.
Correct.
And
to be honest with you, just for a second, I don't mean to interrupt you, Don.
Yeah, don't worry.
Think along those lines, like keep going with that. And you begin to realize that becomes like a self-perpetuating in all sports, not just right. The constant need to innovate, to bring more, more gadgets, right, to the broadcast, the different, views and that kind of stuff. And look how crowded a screen is when you watch any sporting event now. Like I had score at the bottom, and just the statistics, they like whacking you back and forth. And it's like all parts of the screen too. It's not just the bottom, it's top right, the top left. They've got like a million things coming at you. Notice how that trend, I think, I don't know what else they can do to make the experience more immersive. But I'm sure we'll figure out something. They'll notice.
Well, yeah, on the hand cams. Yeah, well, on the 100, they actually talk to the fielder while they're fielding.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I can't. Right. I can't stand that stuff. Talking to, and that started with Pack. When players were dismissed as they came off the field, there would be a Channel 9 reporter waiting to talk to them about, hey, what happened out there? Did you not see the ball? That kind of thing. And some of the players, they had it, some of the players, would say offhand comments, or they walk by, they would refuse to answer them, that kind of stuff. But yeah, or now, in American sports and stuff, they talk to the coach at halftime as they're going into the locker room and that kind of stuff. And my feeling is just let them do their job. Let them concentrate on the game. I don't need to know what their thoughts. I will see their thoughts in the second half or the next inning, whatever the heck it is. Let them concentrate on the game. I think that's intrusive.
The trouble is with the TV programs is they're not interested in your demographic. They're not interested in people who know the game. They're interested in people who have got they've got a phone in their hand, they've got a beer in the other hand. They're looking up every 10 minutes occasionally. It was sort of to a certain extent in some of the UK broadcasters. You can choose what type of commentary you want. You can't choose obviously the pictures, but you can say the non-intrusive this, or you can have just no commentary at all on certain aspects.
But they usually do. We can have the radio the radio commentators, so you can have the TV commentators.
But but the interesting thing is a lot of that is all. Certainly in the UK, that's all quite recent. I know that American baseball sort of lives and dies on statistics, so certainly my limited opinion on it, almanacs and all sorts of things. And there's a little bit of that in cricket, but
this is a little bit. Cricket's full of things. Is wisdom's the riches it's all.
This is where cricket and baseball certainly, connect is the number kind of stuff. And
Indeed, but not on the screen until relatively recently. You wouldn't.
oh yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. But I think Crable does spend a lot of time with stats on the stuff. And some of that, again, this is Packer turning it around, realizing that TV was the future. I'm just saying, I think that the TV people now realize they have constantly innovate something new to keep the crowd going. It's not, you're right, Ian. It's the way, think of it that way. It's not, you don't want to reach the people that are watching. You don't need to preach to the choir. You need to go out in the streets and convert. You need to keep growing the market. You have to keep growing the market. There's no way to make hay, right? The only way to do it is to grow the market. Like when big football matches and stuff go on here in the United States, I mean, American football, Gridiron football, you'll have cable channels that devoted to different angles. You can tune in and only see an angle from above the players on American football. And that's what you see. You don't see the other angle. It's just that angle.
Yeah.
And I guess some people must prefer to look that way or whatever. And this is like a very recent innovative thing. Listen, the internet as well has also, like I watch, most cricket matches, not on TV, but, on the internet.
Yeah.
I can catch them, through the special app here in the US and that kind of stuff. Sometimes YouTube broadcasts matches. But I see a lot of it, through my computer, not even on TV or on my phone when I'm out. I was watching the US play Pakistan. It was going on, in the morning our time, and I was teaching, and in between classes, as we have a change of class, like I'm tuning in on the phone, I'm looking, and kids were coming in there, Mr. Lynn, you all right? I'm like, yeah, fine. Whatever, something would go wrong, and they realized, like, what's going on? Watch, the audience in there, they have no idea what I was talking. And then I'd have to tune out.
So what do you think?
So I just wanted to say one of the legacy that came out of Packer was probably the nighttime aspect. Because without that, why would they think, well, cricket needs to be played at night? I mean, I'm just thinking of lasting legacy.
Listen, color clothing franchise cricket, as it turns out, like I said, all those writers early on, like, what's the incentive? Like, why would people want to watch this? Australia versus England. It's not Lancashire versus Yorkshire. So what's the intent? And as it turns out, franchise cricket is something that people will pay, and attend. Take a look at, So, as like maybe in a way, right? So Tony Gregg, right? He never really, played much after World Series cricket. And, he does become a commentator and that kind of stuff. Which is great. Nice. So, but as it turns out, right? So when T20 gets started and they have the first T20 World Cup in 2007, right? And I think India win.
Yeah.
And next thing, up to that point, the T20 had made no impact kind of in India. And they sent a very young squad to that World Cup in 2007. Not really sure what to do with T20. Then they come home with the cup. And the next thing you know, the Indian Cricket League starts, the ICL. That was short-lived. But, this was a private venture. And guess, it was done by ZTV in India. This was their start franchises in various Indian cities, get players, not just Indian, but, from other countries. Does this sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah.
And make it like a television broadcasted event, that thing. And guess who sat on the board for the ICL? Tony Gregg. They went ahead and got him. And, because obviously he knew a little about all this away. So they're the model, didn't they? Right. So unlike the Packer thing, right? The BCCI, the Indian Cricket Bowl, they wasted no time whatsoever banning all the players that had signed up for the ICL, which is one thing. But unlike the ICC back in the Packer day, the BCCI turned around and said, instead, we're going to start our own T20 league, the IPL. And that's why the ICL shut down at the end of that. And then, the IPL takeover. And we all know, what that means when it comes to, Rev and Razzmatazz, that kind of stuff, I can remember ICL matches starting and trying to find them for free. And I was able to watch some of those early ICL matches before the IPL got started. And that's what the IPL, they just took whatever the ICL was doing and they made it into the Indian Premier League. So really the ICL was... another legacy maybe as well would be the Rebel tours to South Africa that occurred in the 80s. Yeah. Because they too were private ventures. Once Packer does what he does, it opens up private entrepreneurs to jump in with bags full of money and saying, play here, do that. And in essence, that has never left, right? Look at the amount of short tournaments, cricket tournaments around the world all year long, right? And that it's like we talked about, right? Some of these same players will go from country to country to country,
Absolutely.
playing, right? Because that's where the money is. These franchises, they play for like a month and a half. Next thing you know, they're walking out with $300,000 right in their pocket.
Yeah.
And how can they turn that money down? As the playing career shorts, so they know retirement is on the corner, and why shouldn't they be able to make money now and lay it aside for later in life? So yeah, that whole the franchise cricket that's taken over, going from America to Oman, right, to India, to wherever, Australia, just to play, in mostly 2020, but now the T10 leagues that are occurring with older players, lesser known players, and you see those tournaments rising up. And I'm not sure how those tournaments make money. Yeah, because when you see them, there's not like big crowds in the stadiums.
Yeah.
For some of those matches. I mean, there's got to be money made. It has to be from TV, or those tournaments would put crushing on. So these are almost like tailor made for, and maybe that's, and that's how no, that was Packer's big thing. Yeah. This is going to be a television twin. That's what really rankled the establishment. But if you go back to that quote that Bradman had, like, all the things we cherish, our hearts about, it will be damaged and damaged beyond repair. Well, within a year and a half after Bradman wrote that letter, he's having that meeting with Packer and saying, okay, what do we got to do to make this, realizing that cricket was now changing. Plus, people like Tom Bradman and other establishment, figures at the time, you go look at their life and what they had to do to make a living. And you realize that they understood at least where these were coming from, that would sign up for Packer. They weren't making like real solid money. And that's what Packer was offering. And again, it was through television. That's where Packer was going to recoup. So they always said, like, even though Packer he lost money, World Series, those 2 years, like it could have been as much as anywhere, you hear figures anywhere from like $6 million at a minimum that he lost, up to like maybe 20 some $million that years. And yet, when Packer retires, he's worth $6 billion when he died. I mean, sorry, not when he retires, but $6 billion. And that he made up for any loss of money. He made up for that 12 years of marketing Australia cricket. That's where he made his money, was marketing, right?
Yeah.
And that's, cricket has become, big business, like all sports have become business. And the best athletes in the world get paid so much money, can be, of people that it's almost incomprehensible. But the money aspect, of course, changes the nature of this, right? And, whether it be more bouncers in cricket, more bouncers back in the day, or the way, dunking in basketball, whatever brings in the crowd, but it changes sometimes the play on the field itself. But that seems to be, modern marketing. And that's what's happened. Packer jumped on that bus early on. If you want to say he was in the driver's seat, maybe. If he wasn't really driving the bus, he was really close, right behind the driver.
Well, and in some ways, which is what I've become very cynical about sport. Certain sports, the sport itself almost becomes an irrelevance. I mean, not quite an irrelevance, but it's. I mean, I'll use the American Super Bowl as an example, and it might just be the way it's reported in this country, but it seems to be a dance competition at halftime, surrounded by some sportsmen. And surrounded by angry politicians, and where's the sport? Right?
Commercials. By the way, in commercials, I don't know whether that makes it onto the English screen.
No, they don't show they don't show the half-times commercials.
Right,
Yeah.
that is a giant deal.
Indeed,
it is massive. That the first couple of commercial breaks are, are usually specially made for the Super Bowl itself. Whatever product's being advertised, whatever people, there are plenty of people that are not football fans. They will tune into the Super Bowl.
Yes, that's exactly it. It's a
not only for the halftime show, but they will tune in for those commercials like that.
Cricket's a long way from there, but soccer in the UK or certainly in Europe is going there, but not quite there yet. But But yeah, I mean, look at tennis where they follow the players everywhere, even if having a cry in the corner. Let's say, this person's life's been destroyed, and because they lost a tennis match. It is very peculiar.
Well, when the World Cup's in the US this year, the rumor is that the halftime, then the final is going to have a show. They're actually going to extend the halftime from 10 minutes to 30 minutes to fit the show in. It's like,
I don't want to seem like I'm too ignorant. Where is the fun?
it's in New Jersey. It's at the
It's going to be a giant stadium, or whatever, in East Rutherford. Okay, because we're sharing the World Cup. I think
that's right, with Mexico and Canada, yeah,
and Canada's right. So so the U.S. got the final thing. Yeah, okay, I fully expect that to occur. A little razzmatazz as well. But I soccer. I agree with Ian. I think football is already kind of going down that road.
Yeah,
I think you've got to remember about TV and football is sport is a very cheap, medium for TV. Because that people are going to watch it. So you might or the deals are eye watering. But when you rack up a football ground or a cricket ground or a American football ground, that people are going to watch it. So it's not as if you're making a series and it bombs. A drama series.
Right.
You could spend millions of pounds on a drama series and half of them bomb. The Super Bowl, the test matches, people are going to watch that. And if you put a bit of razzmatazz around it, people who don't like the sport are going to watch it as well. So it's very cheap TV. It doesn't cost anything, but in comparison to bang for buck, you know what you're going to get, so that's why it's attractive to channels.
Yeah, and by the way, that seemed to have been the impetus, as to why Kerry Packer was so upset he did not get this.
Yeah.
In Australia, was because for his Channel 9 down there, it was very expensive to produce and direct an Australian TV program, put them on air. You're right, it's always a crapshoot and it's investment. The Packers would buy, this started with his dad, buy television from the United States. They picked them up pretty cheap. And then, either TV shows or movies from the US, and that would eat up airtime. But they realized that sport was, the cheapest way to eat up air, and still, it had the best, ratio of earnings to cost, right? Kind of a deal. And so that seems to have been his input as well. Right on money about that. It's cheap television where it was, back in the day.
Well, even the huge deals, because the hundreds million billion pound deals that some of these TV companies do with world sports, that's over a huge period of time, and it's offset against advertising revenue,
listen, they wouldn't do those deals if they knew they weren't going to make it back on the back end. And so obviously, this is a tremendous industry, and that's what I'm saying. Like the idea of especially in the United States, right? Kids believing going to become professional athletes and little. And it's hard for them to realize that this is a really small fraction of 1% that actually have that kind of talent and drive, et cetera, to perform at the top. But, when you're inundated all the time, in essence, with sport all the time, everywhere, you can understand why, especially young people, that, one day they're going to be doing it when chances are, no, you're not. And you better have something to fall back on, have a career to fall back on, because it's very few people that, that can play professional sports and make that kind of money. Like the Winter Olympics are going on. I don't know how much ripple it makes in Great Britain. But, when they market the Olympics, the Winter Olympics and the Summer Olympics, on American television, it's not so much the event, it's about the personality. Like it's the stories. And
it's the same here. I mean, last night Britain was going to win a bronze medal in ice skating, and they came 7th. Well, you would never have known that was going to happen, given all the emphasis they put on these poor young people who now are getting pilloried in social media for tripping and stuff. It's very similar. It never used to be quite as much as that. It's almost it's a spectacle which people watch, but 80% of some of the stuff, if there's no Britain involved, it won't be shown in prime time. Let's put it that way.
Well, I disagree with that. I mean, I've been watching a lot of the Winter Olympics. Britain's in most of the outdoor stuff.
In prime time?
Well, I'm not watching the pay-per-view.
So
watching what's
the two Brits that fell last night were on BBC One.
I know. So that was
at 9 o'clock of an evening, and that wasn't.
Yeah, but then that was the biggest event that at that time on that day of the Winter Olympics.
British people in it. Yeah, but British people in it.
It just happened. Yeah, but what
It
other
wouldn't have been
event?
on BBC. It wouldn't have been on BBC One at 9 o'clock if there was no Brits in it.
I didn't say it wouldn't have been on BBC.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is what else was on at 9 o'clock yesterday in the Winter Olympics?
It wasn't on BBC One.
I don't care whether it was on BBC One. It says what
Well,
other
other
events was on.
I don't know because they weren't
No,
showing it. So
I don't think there were any other events. That's what I'm saying. Is that so when the downhill was on,
Yeah.
they put that on. That was on
100%.
BBC One, and I watched that because
100%.
there's no British downhill skiers.
It wasn't on prime time. It was on in the afternoon.
They showed it live on BBC One. It just happened to be at night
It would have been. It can't have been on 9. It'd be pitch dark. But
in the morning. It was one of the first events.
Right. It's always, as Joe said earlier on, it's cheap. It's I can't remember the expression used, but it's time fillers. Sport is a very good time filler, isn't it?
It is. And I'm just saying, and you're right, with modern day cable satellite, you could probably watch almost every event at the way you're like much chosen. Yeah, what's given center spot, prime time, etc. seems to me to be a combination of, dramatic life stories as well as the event itself. But you're right, during the day or whatever. And if you want to switch channels, you can find, the women's curling match between South Korea and Italy. You can find that too and watch it. But prime time in the U.S. at night, it's going to be American athletes and dramatic life that you're gonna tune into. And so, and that's not new this Olympics. That's since literally since.
Well, there's also that story of that slightly peculiar. I'm not sure what Nordic skier who made some, mea culpa about having an affair with somebody, and it was the worst thing he ever did whilst he was getting his medal or some such nonsense. And that was on BBC news programs the following day. Phone-in comment. Do you think his girlfriend should have him back? And you think, where's the sport? Where's the sport? It's all about drama and
First, he's
personalities. Yeah.
and I agree with you on that.
It's just an age thing. Maybe young people don't notice it and don't care. I think, well, the fact that some strange man wants to admit to having an affair while getting a bronze medal. I mean, yeah, great. It should be due to psychiatrists rather than billion of people.
Yes, so saying rather than using the TV as your cow.
Indeed. And then why one of the world's major broadcasters then thinks that's worthy of several different news programs the following day, where other slightly odd people can ring and admit to the same things. There's another conversation altogether, but yes, all under the banner of sport. It's which is interesting, isn't it? That sport has, certainly as the TV companies are concerned, this power to, never mind what's happening somewhere else where people are being murdered or killed or whatever. But look at this bloke here. He's cheated on his girlfriend. What do you think? It's a very strange world we live in these days. Well, it certainly seems to be from my perspective. But we digress.
Anyway, yeah.
At the time too, by the way, one of the things to me was that certain players that were not probably earmarked for test status and that kind of stuff, because of the work, were given their chance.
Yeah.
And so probably the biggest beneficiary of that was Ian Bowden. Like he was pulled up probably years ahead of schedule into the England test squad. And once he got there, he let it be known that he surely belonged there and stayed there. Right. You know what I'm saying? So, and then likewise, I was thinking, Shane Warne, when he pops on the scene, as a spin bowler, a left-handed white whale, and a rare. But one of the things that kind of catapulted him to fame was not just that he was good at but because he was a spinner that was good. And that World Series cricket had, kind of denigrated, spin bowling, and here comes Bourne, and then he stays for as long as he can. But I know he's a decade or so later than World Series cricket. Notice there, the lack of spin bowling, and then Shane Warne coming, then he's.
He was a product of the television age, wasn't he? In terms of the pitch persona,
That's right. And who else? And Ian Bowden was the same way. His off-pitch persona. So that was right in the 80s. That is when he came into his and it's the off. It's good TV. That's not.
Well, Ian Bowden's still doing adverts on UK television. It's usually a particular demographic who watch afternoon television. So he's late. It must mean he's late 60s.
Targeted at our age.
Well, indeed. Well, I'm not
Retired.
totally convinced.
Yeah.
So he's advertising sort of foot spas and
Something to,
cod liver oil tablets.
That's
and
right, yeah. So the elderly and making them more mobile, that type of stuff. And he's put on a lot of weight, They don't call him beefy.
I don't know, with something ridiculous. I can't remember. Did he get
can't
put into that? Did something to do with Brexit or something with Australia trying to get one of the trade deals through or something? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, he looks pretty beefy now, but he's got a beard like you, Joe. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, there you go. My beard's getting long. In fact, I just napped on her. It's like, oh, I gotta shave. I'm gonna shave this down a little bit.
Anyway,
Try to keep it. Yeah.
right. So we might as well bring this to. I think we could carry on talking about cricket. I mean, I was going to say that with the IPL $6.5 billion marketing budget, you'd think that somebody in the US would be going, there's got to be something now in the US, but I can't see it. I think that cricket.
There's that major. Right. The Major League Cricket, our franchise cricket, is still set to run this summer. There's been all kinds of issues in the off season between the U.S. cricket and the ICC kind of stuff. But, that's kind of like the same old story.
Yeah.
But it looks like, it looks like Major League Cricket's still going to be set to run this summer. And, they're still going to give it a try and still invest the money and hope for the best. So this will be season 3.
Yeah.
So let's see an increase in ratings or attendance or whatever.
I think they have to get more grounds, don't they? I mean, the fact that I know that, the New York tier wanted to. So
in Florida, in North Carolina, in Houston, there's one in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Then they added one in Oakland, California.
Right.
Just this new season where an old baseball, they can do a cricket field. And that actually drew crowds, those matches there out in Oakland. It actually looks like a nice stadium. Actually, it does look imagine.
Maybe they'll do the Olympics T20 there.
Yeah, that'll be another right. So we have to 2028 for that, and we'll
That's
see
right,
how that goes. And for that,
Although it's only the women's. I don't know why they're only doing women's T20.
they're not doing the men's.
No, I don't think so. I think it's only the women's T20 Olympics. I'll have to look that up, but that's what I thought it was. I'll have to check on that.
Okay. Yeah, I thought it was best.
Yeah, but I mean, fingers crossed it becomes a reasonable sport in the US. It doesn't need a huge amount. It's never going to take over from the top 3 or the top. But the US is
Creating like a niche there.
That's right. Yeah,
and that might be enough, right? To make it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Another opportunity for youngsters to become sports stars. Especially when you start talking about touring the world and you're going around these. T20 tournaments like the ones in the UK and then in India and then in Australia. They're all slightly different times of the year.
Yeah, it seemed to be lined up that way. You have players.
That's right. Earn a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, on enough jet airplanes like that. So yeah, that's
right.
Okay.
Right. So on that bombshell, then we'll call this done. I think that was a really interesting conversation, Joe.
As ever.
You're so knowledgeable about cricket. We're going to have to check. So the next podcast we do is actually going to be about history. So then we'll see how good you are on history. So that should be especially so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to
Likewise.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. It's we always learn a lot. And you're very articulate, Joe. So you must have some very good students, I bet. There you go.
Knock on wood, I am very lucky in my career at students, and I fully realize this.
Let's hope some of them are listening. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they will. Yeah. I'll be mentioning this. Yeah, some of them will tune in. They'll see what's going on about that kind of thing.
Excellent. Right. So thanks everybody. We'll be back again. We've got another guest on our next podcast as well. So thanks for listening. Speak to you next time. Bye for now.
Bye.
Well, that's it. Now, we want to hear what you think. So those of you who are part of the Twitterati or X-rated or whatever it is these days, you can leave your comments, good or bad, at ORC_time. We love your feedback. Remember, if you liked this podcast, tell your friends. And if you didn't, tell your friends. Today's episode was sponsored by O Techno. a wholly owned subsidiary of the Uncle Schnookums Incorporated, the advanced technology divisions of Gyrocash, the crypto fumiers. Because our currency is never clean.